Good morning, everybody. Dr. KP Singh, former DGP Haryana and the Vice President IPF and Director of the IPF Center on Prison Reforms. Dr. Upneet Lali, Head Coordinator of the Institute of Correctional Administration, Chandigarh, with whom we are partnering to conduct today's online seminar. Mr. M.R. Ahmed, Director APA Vellore, Sri Somesh Goyal, former DGP Haryana, Himachal Pradesh, Professor Vijay Raghavan from Tata Institute of Social Sciences, Dr. Ish Kumar, former DG NCRB and Vice President of the IPF, and also our Director heading the IPF Center on the Internal Police Reforms. All participants of today's online seminar who have joined us from different parts of the country, ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning to every one of you. I'm so happy to see such a large participation, very enthusiastic participation from different parts of the country, from across the country. I see a very large number of officers who have joined this conversation. My name is N. Ramachandran. I am the president of the Indian Police Foundation. Many of you may be knowing about the Indian Police Foundation, but for the benefit of others, I'll briefly say what is the Indian Police Foundation. It's a multidisciplinary think tank and professional institute where both serving and retired police officers, as well as all those who are interested in criminal justice reforms, come together in an informal setting to discuss matters of interest as well as the challenges faced by the criminal justice system. This is an informal platform for the pursuit of professional excellence. The foundation is driven by a coalition of progressive police officers and citizen stakeholders who believe that positive transformation in the Indian police is possible through collective action by all stakeholders. So I would invite every one of you present here to join the Police Foundation as members, as professional members. You can get in touch with us on email. Recently, the IPF set up a Center of Research and Learning on Prison Reforms under the leadership of Dr. KP Singh. And I congratulate him on this first event held under this center. The crucial role of the prison and correctional system in the entire criminal justice system is well known to all of you who are present today. We in the Indian Police Foundation believe that our efforts on police reforms should go hand in hand with prison reforms, and efforts to improve conditions inside prisons, improve the effectiveness of the penal system itself, and implement alternatives to incarceration. I do not intend to speak much about the problem itself, the huge set of problems that are being faced by our prison system and correctional system. I will leave it to the experts. I wish to mention here that our chairman, Mr. Gurbachan Singh Jagat, has sent us his best wishes for this conference. He is unable to join today because of another engagement, but he has sent us a message in which he has advised us to pay attention to both social reintegration of prisoners as well as certain aspects of victimology. I will read out excerpts from his message for 1 minute. This is a message from Sri Gurbachan Singh Jagat, Chairman IPF. I would like to point out here that Although we have given attention to the problems of prison reforms and rehabilitation of criminals, we have not paid adequate attention to victimhood. Very little work has been done on the plight of victims of serious crimes like rape, murder, kidnapping, and other such crimes, and their agony of being left to themselves without any support from the state or the society. This is a huge problem, and I think it would be a very relevant subject for a study by the IPF in the future. I send my best wishes for the success of the colloquium and hope it makes useful recommendations to the government after its conclusion. This is the message from Sri Gurbachan Singh Jagat. So before I invite the moderator of today's event, Dr. KP Singh, I would like to briefly introduce Sri KP Singh. As most of you may be knowing, Dr. KP Singh is a retired Indian Police Service officer of 1985 batch. He had the opportunity to work in Haryana Police as the Director General of Police. He was also Director General of Prisons, Director General of State Vigilance Bureau, and DG Human Rights Commission. He worked in Haryana Prisons Department for 5 long years in different capacities, including in the capacity as Director General of Prisons. He has been a member of the drafting committee of the Model Prisons Manual 2016. Dr. Singh has written 24 books on laws and police training, including 4 collections of stories and 1 novel. His books have been awarded by the NHRC, MHA, BPRND, and the Haryana Sahitya Academy. He is a guest faculty at more than a dozen training institutions imparting professional instruction to police officers, prison administrators, magistrates, civil officers, and law students. At present, he is teaching law students as a guest faculty at the Army Institute of Law, Mohali. So I would now invite Dr. KP Singh to take over and conduct the proceedings. And I would also request that at the end of today's conference, we may continue to have the consultations with the experts who are participating, as well as all other members who are interested in joining them, continue the conversation, and then finally we should try and bring out a research paper, a policy advisory paper for submission to the state governments as well as the central government. That is my request to Dr. KP Singh and the entire team. So I welcome all speakers today and hand over the mic to Dr. KP Singh and wish you a very useful discussion today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for your very kind words for me and for your introductory remarks. We will be guided in this colloquium by your wisdom and by your introductory words. In this colloquium, we have 6 distinguished speakers. Each speaker will be speaking for about 20 minutes. And then we have a 20 minutes question answer session, open house. And the proceedings will be concluded with the summary of discussions by Dr. Upneet Lali and a vote of thanks by her. So without losing much time, I invite our first speaker of the day, that is Dr. M.R. Ahmed. Dr. M.R. Ahmed is a thorough professional on correctional matter and is one of the few experts in the country in the field. He is nationally and internationally acclaimed for his philosophy on correctional matters and is invited by different countries for giving talk to their professionals. He has been director APCA and has been contributing a lot in the field of correctional administration. May I now request Dr. M.R. Ahmed to please express his views on the theme which has been allotted to him, that is prison reforms and alternatives to imprisonment. Dr. Ahmed, please.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your nice words. Distinguished moderator, distinguished president of the IPF, and distinguished speakers, all participants in this colloquium, my greetings to you all. It's my pleasure to speak on a few prison reforms. And in the given time of 20 minutes, it's very difficult to dwell on all prison reforms. But of late, I have been thoroughly convinced of one reform which our country has missed, and that is sentence planning. But before coming to sentence planning, I would present a small this thing on prison reforms. The PPT is gone. Anyway, yeah, the first and foremost is that we have been discussing, and the Mullah Committee has discussed about the need for certain major prison reforms. During the last 30 or 35 years, a lot has been done in this direction. Every state prison department have excelled in introducing a number of reforms. With the result, the prison system, which was literally primitive when I joined service in 1979, has reached to such an extent. Now, the present status in some of the states is very excellent. And the reforms we introduced are far and wide, and then accepted and then approved to be worthwhile. But while these reforms are already there, but one major thing which I would like to say is that there is no uniformity in the country as far as prison administration is concerned, and many states are going in their own direction. I mean, there has also been a request and a demand from every prison department in the state, and especially the prison officers, to improve the service conditions. I think, and to make the prison service into a professional service, there is an urgent need to bring in all India prison service. This is it's very necessary, and with the experience which I have put in for more than 40 years, I think the time has come that we should seriously think about making an all India service. Now, similarly, the most important aspect which I would like to state, the one reform which will cover number of reforms, and that is sentence planning, which our country has missed. In fact, I made a presentation, but within the 20 minutes, I think an elaborate presentation may not be possible, but I'll briefly explain what is sentence planning. Sentence planning is an individual way of treatment of prisoners, which way in our country we are not doing it. With my experience, I'll tell you that when a prisoner comes into our prison, a person is brought to our prison, we look into the sections under which he is charged, and if he is charged under serious sentence, we consider him as a serious criminal and dangerous criminal. And basing upon the vacancies available in the vocational centers, we allot to him. And the short-termers normally are not allotted any factory; they are used either as orderlies or kitchen workers, or simply put on ground to pick grass. I mean, because it's just not possible for providing meaningful vocational training or skill training to all the prisoners. Now, this vocational sentence planning, I am very unhappy and surprised to see that our country has not realized this wonderful evidence-based concept, while our neighboring countries like Bangladesh has seriously taken this topic, and they have included in their Prisons and Correctional Services Act. To briefly explain what is sentence planning, it is a blueprint of what needs to be completed from the time of admission of a prisoner to the time of his release and reintegration. So it is day one till day last, and then reintegration. And it identifies what the prisoner needs to do throughout their sentence and focuses on rehabilitation activities identified in the original classification assessment. Sentence planning focuses on the criminal and behavioral history, vulnerability, addictions, psychological status, educational level, health status, and work skills and experience, and set targets to meet individual needs and aim to reduce the identified risk. Now, what is the significance of this? It's an essential precondition. Sentence planning is an essential precondition for the correction of prisoners and to derive the evidence-based results. As you agree with me, it emphasizes the correctional treatment of prisoners. Therefore, prison authorities encourage the personal reform and social rehabilitation and help prisoners to lead law-abiding and self-supporting lives after the release. Now, it is designed to create optimal conditions for the resettlement and resocialization of convicted prisoners. The rehabilitation plan changes the behavior and prepares the prisoners for release while reducing the likelihood of his reoffending. Now, what does it contain? It has several steps. The first step is the risk assessment. Now, this topic of risk assessment classification has been discussed in various forms, but I see only 5 states are doing this aspect, risk assessment and classification and categorization of prisoners. Few states like Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, Tamil Nadu, Punjab, and Delhi, they have been implementing that. And that is the first step of sentence planning. Now, this risk assessment and classification is done through a committee known as classification committee. And so this classification committee consists of the superintendent, deputy superintendent, jailer, and doctor, etc., etc. So the first step, as soon as the prisoner is admitted, he is placed before a classification and security committee for initial classification and categorization in order to determine the risk and needs of the prisoners and to prepare them for their sentence planning and implementation process. A committee which shall include at least one female prison officer shall be formed in the manner which we prescribe once we decide. Classification refers to procedure of placement of prisoners in one of the several custody levels, that is maximum, medium, and minimum, to match prisoners' needs and correctional resources, which include the type of facility. Of course, in other countries, we don't have special facilities for dangerous and S1 category. Model Prison Manual has already brought out in chapter 25 several categories of high security, high risk offenders into S1, S2, S3, S4, S5. And this, I'm not sure that majority of states are implementing that. Now, the next stage, now there are several stages. Once the prison classification is done, then the needs of the prisoner are analyzed. So through interview and through the committee will find out the needs. And the risk analysis also will have a tool. The prisoner's need analysis will also have a tool. Once we come to know the needs of the prisoners, we check out a sentence plan. This is an individual plan. So we need the support of so many officers, like so many staff, like psychologists, counselors, and medical officers and others, probation officers and welfare officers. A case plan is made basing on the needs of the prisoner, and an officer will be allotted to monitor the progress of prisoner. And this is not meant only for those prisoners who are not, who are classified as low security or medium security. Sentence plan is applied to all prisoners. And in the case of S1, S2 categories, the only difference is that these prisoners will be lodged in special security enclosures. But nobody is born criminal. Everyone is amenable to reformation and rehabilitation. So therefore, by constant monitoring of the prisoner's progress and this skill development, and the skill will not be allotted, or trade will not be allotted haphazardly, basing on the prisoner's experience and his previous work experience and his knowledge, his educational level will be taken into consideration. And periodical reviews are conducted, and once he nears the approach, nears the completion of sentence, and a review is made, and at every level, the prisoner is helped to come out of his criminal behavior by moral instructions, by constant counseling, and by bringing contact with his family and also village elders and the religious, leaders, etc. And finally, our community leaders are brought inside the prison. A plan is chalked out for his ultimate rehabilitation and reintegration. Now, I think we have been doing the reformation, rehabilitation in a very haphazard manner, and we do not have research studies to know that how many prisoners who are released. How many released prisoners are settling down. But one thing about Indian conditions is that in India, the family support is there. That is the reason why many lifers generally they get assimilated into society and they normally don't come back. But in the case of property offenders and city bred criminals, etc., the recidivism rate is very high. I think we have to concentrate on the convicts who are likely to become recidivists, and that is where sentence planning comes into picture. Now, as far as under trial prisoners are concerned, the first step of the sentence planning, that is classification and categorization, equally applies to under trial prisoners also. So sentence planning, I feel it is high time we start discussing, and the plan needs to be formulated, and then officers need to be trained. And then I'm happy to see that many state governments are seriously discussing this concept, and I'm sure in the next few months or short time, the concept will be understood, and I'm sure the government of India also will include this in the proposed Indian Prisons Act also, as this is the basis for prisoners rehabilitation and reintegration. Now, next I will go to the alternatives, subject of alternatives, and here I would like to present I'm sure this is seen by the audience. Please confirm.
No, it is not visible, Dr. Ahmed. You can please just list out without making the presentation. You can just mention.
Okay, that will be fine. Okay, now the next topic given to me is alternatives to imprisonment, a topic which I think again we need to take seriously. Though we have certain alternatives in our criminal justice system, we haven't recognized the importance of that. Now, first of all, why do we need alternatives? Number one, indiscriminate use of imprisonment. If you look into the composition of prisoners, we find young offenders, mentally ill people, drug addicts, a number of them are sent to prison. Non-serious offenders and short-termers are kept in prisons in large numbers. And this is leading to a lot of overcrowding, and overcrowding, as you all know, leads to abuse of human rights and pressure on prison administration. And overcrowding also leads to high cost of maintenance of prisons. Shortage of resources for proper accommodation, healthcare, food, and to provide activities to prisoners, it also becomes a problem. Social damage due to stamping, loss of employment, employment prospects of prisoners, reduction in chances of social integration, and contamination due to association with criminals in prison. Now, there are a number of alternatives. And before that, I would like to just express my views that all over the world now, criminologists have come to an understanding, and they advocate that prison should be used as a last resort. And only on 3 grounds, people should be sent to prison. On number 1 ground, when the person is dangerous. Number 2, when he commits a heinous offense. Number 3, when there are certain offenders who are highly influenced, but their damage caused to society by them is much more serious than the other type of criminals. They are white-collar criminals. So they feel that under these 3 grounds only, people should be sent to jail. And these people are threat to the safety and security of the society. To protect society, people should be sent only on three grounds. And if you take this idea, and if you look into our prison population, you will be astonished to see that majority of people are socially backward, poor, and come from marginal societies, involved in minor offenses, and the real dangerous and who are threat to safety and security of society are hardly 5 to 10%. This I am telling out of my personal experience, and I have been asking many prison officers their opinion, and they agree that the real dangerous type of people inside the jail constitute only 5 to 10% of prisoners. Now, let us see. Do prisoners reform? I don't think. Prisoners actually damage people. We think that by bringing a person from society where positive vibes prevail and bring him and put him in a jail where negative vibes prevail, and we think that the prisoner gets reformed, I think it's a tall order. So that is the reason why alternatives become very important, and we should seek that people who don't deserve to be kept in the jail should be punished outside the jail in a number of ways and socially accepted. Now, and one more important thing which I'd like to share is 10 years ago, about a decade ago, the prisons in Holland have become totally vacant. There was not even a single prison in the prisons of Holland, Netherlands. And the whole world was surprised. How can it happen? And it happened. It happened because the society, the elders, the prison officers, the police officers, the politicians, the administration, they all came together. They realized and they agreed that prison damages people, and therefore, unless the person is a threat to the safety and security of the society, he should be punished outside the jail. Of course, they devised a number of alternatives. Now, let me go straight away to the topic, alternatives to imprisonment. There are 3 stages here. One is the pre-trial stage, second is sentencing stage, and the post-judicial stage. Now, let us see. In the pre-trial stage, we have alternatives like diversion, fines, bail, release on personal bonds, house arrest, electronic monitoring. Now, I need not elaborate these things. The participants are aware, but at the end of the session, if anyone wants to ask, I can elaborate because time is not enough. Now, let me go to the sentencing stage. There are a number of alternatives, which in India, some of them are being implemented. Number 1, admonition and absolute discharge, oblique conditional discharge. Yes, restitution and compensation. Fine at the sentencing stage, fine is also there. Suspended sentence, probation, limitation of liberty, community service order, periodic detention. Now, here, I would like to stress on community service order. This is an highly successful alternative being implemented in almost all countries except very few countries. Now, this community service order in India of late, the judiciary started implementing in few cases on their own, even when there is no law available. First, the Supreme Court in BMW case, they have implemented. In Gujarat, for prohibition cases, they are implementing. In fact, one way of implementing is make a condition, one of the conditions for a probation order. But the Andhra Pradesh in 2010 passed an act, release of offenders and community service, 2010, that was sent to Government of India. It is still there pending with the Government of India. And this act prescribed community service for offenders who are sentenced to 1 year and below. I think it's a high time every state or the central government should brought out a legislation and community service order. This is very highly successful. Now, going to post-judicial stage, we have alternatives like work release program, which we follow in many prisons, home leave, parole release, or leave in some places called pardon or executive summary. These are the alternatives, and I think that there is an urgent need to broaden the scope of alternatives, and the judiciary should be more liberal as far as alternatives are concerned. Sending juveniles and young offenders to jail is not a good step. Similarly, offenders who are not involved in serious cases should be invariably released unless he is reported to be a threat or has committed a heinous offense. So my sincere opinion is that it's a high time India seriously considers alternatives to imprisonment. And if time permits, I would like to dwell on community service for the.
I think, Dr. Ahmed, we can discuss it in the question answer session.
Okay, that's nice, and thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Good morning,
for giving me
KP.
this option. Thank you.
Good morning, KP.
Sir.
I think we can allow Dr. Ahmed to continue because I will be very brief. Let him eat into my time. So you can have
No,
5 minutes. You can have
No, sir,
5 minutes, Doctor.
I'll take 5 minutes, sir.
All right.
Okay, sir.
Okay. I don't know. I'll be able to. I'm able to share or not. But I'll go ahead with my presentation. Now I'll stress on certain few things which we can do it. Number one is electronic monitor, which we have been not taking a serious thing. Electronic monitor is a viable and economical tool for non-custodial forms of supervision. It's in vogue in many developed countries. India has technologically, progressed like any other country. It's a high time we also start using this electronic monitoring. An anklet or a bracelet is worn by an offender who is not a serious offender, which is tied to a computer at home, which is or at a central location, which monitors the whereabouts of an offender. Now, of course, some disadvantages also there. Now, let me go to sentence this straight away to community service. It provides a method of dealing with non-serious offenders who would otherwise be sentenced to imprisonment. The principal objective is rehabilitation. It provides the offender opportunity to make a reparation to the community against which he has committed a crime by working for its benefit. Working for the community will have positive effect on the future attitudes and conduct of the offender. Community service order is less costly than the custodial measure. It costs little to administer and also inexpensive in terms of human and social cost. It avoids expenses of providing food, clothing, shelter, medical care, and necessities in prisons. It releases pressure on prison system by reducing prison population. It enables the offender to live with their families, thereby maintaining family ties. This is most important advantage. It saves the offender from the harmful effects of prisonization. This is again another very serious benefit. And the offender will not face any re-entry crisis, and he will not suffer great changes in employment, family situation that go with imprisonment. This is a great benefit. The community will benefit through the work performed by the offender. Andhra Pradesh already, as I said, they have already done it. Now, there are also a variation of community attendance centers also. Now, there is a very interesting alternative followed in many countries like New Zealand, periodic detention. This, of course, we have not come across in India. Periodic detention is adopted in some countries for the purpose of preserving the community life of the offender by full execution of short-term imprisonment. Short-termers who are sentenced to periodic sentence may be required to undergo imprisonment during night times, as decided by the court. They will attend to their employment from Monday till Friday evening. Friday evening, they will report to the jail, and till the Monday morning, they will be in the jail. Now, this is called periodic. It can also take form of weekend detention in some cases. And this is another one, status penalties in some short-term offenses. You can always punish him by taking away the rights to seek public office or vote, right to drive a car, etc. They may be ordered by a sentencing judge in a non-custodial measure and can be combined with other measures like fine, may be limited or unlimited in time. The main advantage of lies the offender keeping his job and looking after the family. Likewise, it helps protect community. Now, I can go on giving the benefits of these alternatives. I think I'll stop here and then extend my thanks for giving me this opportunity. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Ahmed, for your very enlightening and concise overview of police reforms and alternatives to imprisonment, especially the sentence planning. And the suggestion of your alternatives will go a long way to generate thoughts and discussions among the community of correctional administrator in a big way. Thank you very
Thank
much once again. And
Thank
you
you,
have
sir.
made a very good beginning, and good beginning is half done. Thank you very much once again. May
Thank
I
you,
now
sir.
request
Right.
Shri Somesh Goyal, who has been DGP Himachal Pradesh as well as have headed the prison department of Himachal Pradesh for a long time. Let me introduce Shri Somesh Goyal. He is a thorough professional and is also an accomplished writer. At present, he is the publisher, editor of a police magazine called The Savior Voice of Khaki. And sir is again a big name so far as correctional administration is concerned. May I request sir to interact with the participants on the theme prisons reintegration through livelihood opportunities. Shri Somesh Goyal sir.
Yeah. I hope I am audible now.
Yes, sir, you are.
Thanks, Dr. KP Singh, for the introduction. And I'm sorry I'm not formally dressed like all of you.
It's all right.
I just mentioned to Mr. Ramachandran that I'm at my farm. So forgive me for that. I mentioned a lot of things. I may sound a bit pessimistic when I say that we all talk in the vacuum, and whatever is being achieved is by the collective efforts of various prison departments. You know, he mentioned that the Andhra Pradesh, what they are trying to do for the community service for 20 years, that change in the legislation that Andhra has proposed is pending with Government of India. Like so many, like rest of the things, alternatives is absolutely a wonderful idea, but it can only happen when any of the legislations see light of the day. But do we have an infrastructure even to implement Probation of Offenders Act, Juvenile Justice Act? We are not even doing that. So classification is fine, but what we need to learn from that is, does it mitigate any conditions, adverse conditions in the prisons? Is criminality going down inside the prisons? Is unrest going down? Conflict, depression, and other things going down because of these measures? Is the infrastructure adequate? The subject on which I'm supposed to talk is the reintegration with the society. The ultimate goal of confinement of offenders inside the so-called correctional homes or the prisons is their rehabilitation and reintegration. Sitting here attending this colloquium, I, for one, have not seen any concrete proposal pushed forward by any prison department, accepted and funded by any state government. Most of the changes, most of the efforts are the work of committed prison officers, the prison leaders. The mechanism for reintegration, I would say, is reintegration the responsibility of prison department? Is it? when we come to theoretical understanding of the subject. It is not. You don't facilitate, technically, you don't facilitate reintegration. What happens to the social justice department? It is a multi-department effort. It should be a multi-department effort. I have the family is the secondary victim of crime, of offenders. And be it the convicts or under trials, I believe they are the sole breadwinners for the family. So what kind of efforts we need to do that their financial independence remains and the family doesn't go hungry? A lot of efforts for rehab in the name of rehab have been done in success. Yoga has been tried, music has been tried, so many other arts and crafts. Seeing all these things, I can only say these efforts may win you an award, but it does not put food on the plate of the family of the prisoners. That is what we need to look at. And for me, reintegration would stem when we give a sense of purpose to the inmates. And let me tell you, no sense of purpose inside can be foreseen without any financial support to them. And in my, I tried to do just that. I found that in the prison manual or in the prison acts or in the philosophy, as we say, there are lofty ideals that there should be rehabilitation, there should be reintegration, you will run prison factories like this, but they are all dated. Those books should be thrown away now. They are not in sync with the modern times. We have to reinvent the whole department now. And keeping that in mind, gradually what I did was, let us create some financial independence for them. Whatever and I believe in a year's time, the wages that we used to pay to the prisoners jumped 30 times in 1 year, single year. Now, with the financial year, with the financial wage earning program, the integration with the family is firmer, is better. Why? Family still looks at the prisoner. Let us not talk of the society. I have seen cases inside prisons, disowned prisoners, because they are no good, they are not any good to them anymore. They don't bring any value to the family. So they are disowned. But by this, what we did was that we cannot send the prisoner outside, but can we bring the society inside the prisons? This is exactly what we did. When I talked to the my jail officials, नहीं सर अंदर कैसे आ सकते हैं? भाई सर क्यों नहीं आ सकते हैं? My issues क्यों नहीं आ सकते हैं? जो दिखता है वही बिकता है. So I opened all the to general public to visit. On any day, each day, whatever be the time, if somebody wanted to visit the prison factories to see what they are doing or place an order, they are welcome. I hope this continues even now. So, school children, there were a number of queries. I was attending a dinner and a ladies group or a social organization, they said कि हमने कभी सर जेल नहीं देखा है. I said, अरे जेल नहीं देखा है, आप जाओ ना, जाके आओ. And within 2 days, all those 20 women went inside the prison to see the factories, interact with the prisoners, or unse the kind of questions they ask. And when the prisoners, be it male or female prisoners, when they started interacting with them, they felt they were normal human beings. They were not something who have been sent to Kalapani, a local Kalapani in every jurisdiction. They were normal people. Students came and performed for them. Students performed evenings for them. And these evenings we allowed way beyond their lockup time. I said, nothing doing. If we are not willing to be confident of our security systems and give them normal family kind of an environment inside the prisons, how are we going to integrate them? People inside the prison had a salutary impact on them. Then what we did was, there is a feedback. Somebody may have to reduce the sound. Yeah. So what we did was that we changed the quality. We changed the as per the market needs. A team was seen. They would propose what all changes were required to be made. And we did just that. We hold even now exhibitions of the products. And this exhibition is assisted by the prisoners. For weaving section, a weaver is all present there. 1 or 2 weavers are there. For who works as the chef in the factory, he is present there selling the products. For welding products, they are present and they are interacting with the people. So when people saw that this is how things are taking place, they meet with those people. They are not seen as criminals, but accepted. The acceptance was very good. I would quote an example of the Shimla Book Cafe. Unfortunately, the last chief minister gave it to one of his cronies, took it away from us. So when we started it, it became a benchmark kind of a thing. It became an icon, I would say, national and international icon. It was a chance meeting with people. When I got to know that tourism department and municipal corporation are starting a book cafe, I volunteered that we will run it by the prisoners, a life convicts only. They were shocked, but hats off to these 2 guys, tourism department and the other people, that they allowed us to do it. And you know at what terms? Bureaucracy works in their own style. What is that? The Jamtara is, I think District Jail Jamtara can close their screen. Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah. So hats off to these 2 guys. We selected those people, trained them in soft skills, gave them dress like a cafe coffee day, And we started the cafe with a lot of fanfare. The chief minister started it. Lo and behold, nobody would come. And I said, we are not going to hide who these two people are. We wrote on the wall that they are life convicts. 302 के ये मुजरिम हैं. People won't come inside. कि ये तो कैदी हैं, पता नहीं क्या है ये, क्या जीव है. Gradually they started and it became so popular that after some time. So the integration, I said, there are so many bottlenecks. There are so many prejudices against those. Till we showcase their work and present the prisoners to society, the integration is not going to, acceptance will not take place. And this is what we did in our humble way. And fortunately, it was covered by all the major, whether it is BBC, Voice of America, or whatever, National Geographic, everybody covered that book cafe. Unfortunately, we had to wind it up because of the political interference, because it was a prime property and somebody eyed it. Well, that's okay. Another way that we did for the integration of society was that we made it the responsibility. We have a novel open prison concept. We don't have those. What we have done is every prison has a barrack earmarked for open prisoners. You will be surprised that 7% of the total prison population, mind you, I am not saying the population of convicts, total prison population was allowed to go scot-free. Businesses where we found them work. It was made our jailers to find work for them. Earlier, what was happening, that they would say कि साहब मैं मजदूरी करने जा रहा हूँ, जा भी रहा है या नहीं है, nobody is monitoring him कि चरस बेच रहा है दोबारा से या क्या कर रहा है. I said unacceptable. How much wages he is earning, what kind of company he is keeping, we are not controlling. And we are not giving him a work, skilling him in a work that will continue even after his incarceration. So one shift in a juta factory is even today run by the prisoners. They run it. They go to an F&B factory. They go to hotels to work. And the ladies also, they go and work outside the prisons. So when people interact with them, and when I talked to the factory owner, he was very happy. He said, sir, the kind of commitment these prisoners show is amazing. And one of them was their floor manager. One of the convicts, he was a floor manager there. So this is the kind of acceptance that people have. Only I would suggest that instead of keeping our systems closed, we need to open these systems. And besides reintegration, people, कैदी हैं, किसी से कोई मिलता है अभी तो कहता है अच्छा आप ये काम करते हैं फैक्ट्री में, आप बिस्किट बनाते हैं, आप कपड़े बनाते हैं, आप ज्वेलरी बनाते हैं. That is the kind of acceptance I see now. But my worry is Mr. A may come, Mr. B may come, continue with it, Mr. C may not like it. We have institutionalized. We did institutionalization of this kind of work by having our own, we incorporated a society. EG was free to spend from zero money, zilch, from 0 rupees. We have crores of rupees in that account now. And DG is free to sign a check even of all the amount that is there in the bank without going to any government. So that committee is inside. The money generated is by our own people. And another thing I would like to share is that instead of making them wage earners, I discussed with all the jailers, took them on board, and we converted them into entrepreneurs. All people who earn wages, they don't earn any wages anymore in the prisons. They partake the profit of their profit share. So they are partners in the business. The people who work in a factory, let's say in handlooms, whatever is the profit, a percentage is fixed that your profit is this much and department will keep so much. Now it is up to you what turnover you want to achieve. Now they belong. The whole business belongs to them. पहले क्या होता था, मेरे को शिकायत आती, सॉरी, they were not bothered कि किसी जेलर ने बिस्किट फैक्ट्री से 10 किलो मंगा दिया, इधर कर दिया, उधर कर दिया. जब इनको मैंने पार्टनर बनाया तो मुझे चुपके से, सर ये बहुत सारे, ये वार्डन, ये हवलदार, ये बड़े सारे मुझे बिस्कुट ले लेता है, हमारा प्रॉफिट कम हो रहा है. So that is the kind of ownership they had. Now I think we need to invest ourselves in them, and reintegration, I would say कि ये दूर की कौड़ी है prison department के लिए, because our mandate does not permit it beyond the four walls. So whatever we can do to present our prisoners in good light, highlight their good work, allow them creativity inside the prisons, but ensuring that they become financially independent. I retired, and last summer, there was a knock at my door in Delhi. I simply opened कि कोई काम वाला आया होगा, कुछ होगा दिल्ली में. I said, अरे तुम कहाँ? I called him by his name. I'm not sharing his name on this forum. I said, अरे तू कहाँ से आ गया? सर हम छुट्टी जा रहे थे, हमने सोचा चरण स्पर्श करते जाए. I said, तू क्यों जा रहा है, कैसे जा? सर आपने वो फैक्ट्री शुरू कराया था, उसमें हम काम करते थे, हम 3 लाख रुपया लेके जा रहे हैं, बहन का शादी करने जा रहे हैं. You know, that was my biggest reward. I think my biggest, no police medal has given me as much contentment as a simple statement of this prisoner. So if you do it, financial independence only will make them good. And by this, we saw that a lot of crime inside the prison, conflict inside the prison, depression, and other things came down. And managing those prisoners became an easier task for the jailer. So I think I'll stop at that, Dr. KP Singh. You don't have to look at the watch. It tells me it's noon, so I stop here. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, sir. You have done a lot of plain speaking, and you have given us out-of-box solution to the problem of reintegration of prisoners. And I think your suggestions are so thought-provoking that these prison officers who are present in the participant will like to follow your example and do their bit to ensure that the prisoners are reintegrated in the society. Thank you very much, sir, once again.
Thank you.
You have mentioned about mental health. Now it is my privilege to invite Dr. Rukneet Lali, who is heading the Institute of Correctional Administration, Chandigarh. She is a trained psychologist, and none other but she can deal the issue of mental health of prisoners in a better way. Dr. Lali is a world-acclaimed expert on prisons and correctional matters. May I request now to her to discuss her theme of today, that is mental health issues of prisoners. Dr. Lali, please.
Thank you so much, Dr. KP Singh. And I thank Shri Ramachandran, of course, we've got together for the colloquium. I will try and be a little bit brief. The issue that I'm going to talk about is something, of course, flowing from the initial conversations of both Dr. Ahmed as well as Mr. Sumesh Goyal. And Mr. Goyal is very right in terms of saying that the most challenging part, of course, for prisoners, of course, it's a very negative environment. And as Dr. Ahmed said, prisons are damaging. So there are health issues and particularly mental health issues that exist within the prison setup. There are constraints and again, I would say I'll just share a brief presentation. The problem becomes all the more in the sense that we do not have the experts. So that's something that is shared as such by people in the prison department. These are some of the standards when we talk in terms of what obligation. The state has an obligation to provide adequate treatment. It's the responsibility of the state to provide healthcare services which are similar or at same level as and the Mandela rules also specify in terms of prisons having the number of specialists and psychologists and mental health persons who have mental health problems, they must be treated with humanity. So these are all the various rules that exist, and a recognition of these rules is essential. What is mental health? Now, when we talk of health, total health, we say it's total well-being, not just physical health and not just an absence of disease. But mental health is also a state of well-being in which the people realize their own abilities and can cope with the normal stresses and work productively. So when Mr. Goyal was mentioning about improved mental health, so where, yes, you help people to work productively. And I think the most important aspect for prison officers, the challenge that remains is that how do you manage the time of inmates inside? How do you manage the 24 hours? The 24 घंटे अंदर हैं जेल में, how do you manage those? So that becomes a challenge. The philosophy of prisons as correctional homes started with Mahatma Gandhi, who said, hate the crime and not the criminal. And opening up, let prisons be, and when we're talking of prison reform, so let prisons not be just merely places of confinement. There should be places where you also provide hope and you provide a bit of healing. Why prisons are bad for mental health? It's the physical environment. Any overcrowded prison is going to add to the physical element, is going to add to the stress. A person who's locked up, who has nothing to look forward to in life, there's a loss of purpose. You're not going for work, you've lost your job, the identities get stripped. The whole process is dehumanizing. And prisoners are separated from their families. There is also an exposure to violence that happens, there is bullying that happens, and there is extortion that may happen. So there is that whole exposure to violence that happens. There is also lack of treatment facilities inside. And yes, people in some places, of course, they may be separated and solitary confinement, though is not allowed in our system, but we've had instances where mentally ill were also kept separate. The priority of prisons is low. The priority of health system is further low. Prisons are not a priority of the governments, and there is a low priority which is also accorded to the mental health care. You will not have, in most states, you will not have qualified mental health staff. You will not have psychiatrists. You will not even have psychologists associated with the prisons. Southern states do have psychologists, and Bangalore and all do have psychiatrists, but most of the North Indian states do have, there is absolutely a lack of qualified mental health staff that is there. And at the same time, prison staff is supposed to identify and support people with mental illness. You're supposed to identify whether a person is high on suicide risk, is a drug addict. So therefore, and also care for them. And I've seen that, I recall one visit to Chhattisgarh prison where prisoners who were mentally ill, who had been brought back after treatment from the mental health hospital, they were singing bhajans. So we've evolved also our own ways of caring for inmates with mental health issues. The person who enters into prison system, the first phase we say is the shock and denial. He cannot accept that something has happened to them and there is a numbness. And the first 24 hours are very critical for people who enter the prison system, and prison officers will know that a number of suicides, and we've done a study on suicides, that take place within the first 24 hours or the first week of imprisonment. And this is very, very critical. That how, and therefore classification becomes very important, and risk need assessment is very, very critical, which has been spoken about by Dr. Ahmed earlier. So these are the different phases, and when do you end? When do you start a particular program? When does the individualized treatment take place? Every person may have different set of needs and different set of risks. So a person who is a drug addict will have a different need. A person who is depressed has a different need. And an inmate who is been also, I would say, I've seen instances where persons who have been wrongly booked will have a different kind of a shock and different coping mechanisms that may be available with them. So some of the mental health problems which are faced before imprisonment will also continue when the person is in prison. So a person who has a mood disorder will continue to have that mood disorder while in prison. Psychotic disorder will continue out there. Drug and substance abuse. Persons who have a number of theft cases where they may have their problem, maybe because they are drug users. And in the prison also, there will be substance withdrawal, and prison staff have that challenge of managing. How do you manage withdrawal symptoms? Not every prison will have a de-addiction center. So therefore, you have all these mental health problems that get escalated and excavated in the prison environment. So there may be instances of self-harm, and I've seen this across different countries in the world. I've seen a woman inmate in a UK prison who had about 24 slashes on her wrist. That was the kind of self-harm that existed. So there will be sleep disorders that may exist, and stress-related disorders that may exist in the prison. And yes, we spoke about, Mr. Goel spoke about post-release and whose responsibility, but also, the prisoner will be stressed about what will happen after release. Does the family accept? There may be anxiety that may be related to the release issue. There may be substance withdrawal complications, and we've seen a number of deaths that take place due to drug overdose after release from the prison also. And problems can worsen, and there may be relapse also after release if the continuity of treatment also does not exist. So the contributing factors I've mentioned already, and it has been mentioned, if there is no lack of meaning, if there are no meaningful programs, you're not able to provide काम हम कितने लोगों को दे देते हैं? Creative artwork, how many people are doing that? So if somebody is having 24 hours, is not doing anything, even a normal healthy person will become sick, mentally sick. So lack of meaningful activity is a very, very critical factor that contributes to mental illness. There is a lack of privacy, and everybody needs some space for themselves. So this also contributes to stress, it contributes to anxiety as well. And it can become a downward spiral, and people can, have difficulty in recovering from this. Even persons who stay for a few months inside the prison, I've seen them after release also having a post-traumatic stress disorder. That is the trauma right from arrest to the time of release, that trauma remains with them throughout. So how do you identify? And prison staff is sometimes supposed to identify mental health problems. And what are the mental health problems? There could be suicide and self-harm. Suicide can occur only, and again, though the Mental Health Act has decriminalized suicide, how we view it in our prison manuals and prison rules is a different question. There may be confused thinking and speech, sudden swings in mood, ekdam bahut khush and then suddenly very low, erratic behavior. Some people may not look after themselves. They may be very dirty and filthy, and there may be something that you feel that, yes, this person needs help. There may be withdrawal also. Some individuals may get withdrawn. They'll sit quietly in a corner, not want to talk to someone. And many times you notice that there is, with women, I've seen a lot of crying, and with women inmates, there's a whole lot of emotional content that exists in terms of being not able to express their own needs as such. So they may be either coming out in terms of aggression, verbal aggression, or also in terms of a lot of crime that happens. And not being able to recognize and communicate the problems that they need. COVID does lead to a lot of mental health issues throughout society and also in the prison world. There was also for the staff both stress and anxiety during the COVID situation. And drugs, that two things that I'll emphasize on is some challenges related to the issue of drug use, drugs and substance abuse. This is particularly rampant. Of course, Punjab is a state where almost about 50% of the prison population does have drug issue problems, drug and substance abuse issues. Number of persons who are booked under the NDPS Act may also be drug users. So you will have drug users both outside and as well as inside the prison. And prisons is a risk environment for drug use. Sometimes you end up having persons who have not used drugs earlier may end up abusing drugs inside the prison. And there is a market and there is a parallel economy that runs for this. In terms of the mental health problems, we find that there were almost 9,000 inmates who were reported as mentally ill out of the 5.5 lakh inmates. And similar proportion of both under trials and convicts were mentally ill. And the Mental Health Care Act 2017, it specifies that yes, the rights of mentally ill persons and the treatment programs that need to be made available. So the de-addiction centers and if they are in prison, need to be run in accordance with the provisions of the Mental Health Care Act, and you need to have committees. We've also had instances of mentally ill persons being forgotten by the system. And Dr. KP Singh would recall the case of Machunglal, and you've had Jai Singh case, where persons who were mentally ill were actually forgotten and they spent much more inside the prison. And even though they were supposed to have been free or under the Mental Health Care Act, they should have been in the care outside the prison system. So these are some of the instances, that happen, and the mental health status and at the time of classification is very important. This has been put in the model prison manual that prisoners who require mental health care, they should be attended to by an authorized medical attendant. And even in the Shatrughan Chauhan case, you've had where the Supreme Court has held that insanity and mental illness, they were the supervening circumstances, and a number of prisoners who were to be sentenced to death, their sentence was commuted to life imprisonment. And in Haryana also, there were 2-3 inmates who got that benefit. So number of, because just the, waiting to die, you're waiting to die. And just waiting to die leads to a different death altogether. You may not be physically dead, but mentally you are totally destroyed. And drugs, I mentioned, they get into, it's a real challenge for the prison staff to identify inmates, how they get in drugs. And they are often responsible as well. And it is a huge challenge. So 3 strategies that are being followed in terms of demand reduction, supply, and harm reduction. So for harm reduction, you have the OAT clinics inside the prisons being set up. And this is something that you have in certain countries, also needle and syringe exchange programs in the prison setup. Again, this is to be under the supervision of medical staff and qualified mental health care staff. Women prisoners have their own issues of mental health. And I always feel that, yes, prisons are not made with men in mind. They're made with men in mind, not with women in mind. And we need to consider in alternatives, we need to consider for different set of alternatives for most of these women offenders who may be low risk. And just being separated from their child is definitely stressful. And they have definitely more challenges in reintegration. And there could be postpartum depression as well in case of after childbirth. So this is something that exists. Time is limited. I'm just going to very quickly mention about suicide prevalence in prison. These exist throughout the world in terms of the suicide rate in prison population is twice that of the general population. And having done study on suicides in Punjab prisons, these were some of the risk factors that were found. The static factors included substance abuse, violence, pre-trial issues, and prior suicide attempt. Now, none of these cases, the prior suicide attempt was known actually. And bad news, rejection of bail, death in the family, these are all the dynamic factors that occur. And incarceration related issues, and also fear of being sentenced to, you expect that, yes, tomorrow is your hearing and maybe you're going to be sentenced. So these have led to suicide. And persons who have, some of the risk factors that prison staff need to be cautious about is persons who've not got any mulaqat, who have a weak support system, who have a negative view of self or one's future, who are also shamed, FOXO cases, because of the nature of offenses or any other offense where they've killed their child, there may be that part that triggers off suicide, attempt history, and depression, hopelessness. So prisons should not be places of hopelessness. They should promote hope, whether it is through work programs, creative arts, or combination of different things that are needed. And for identification, we've done programs on suicide prevention. Training of prison staff on suicide prevention is absolutely essential, where you learn to identify and at least give a psychological first aid, if nothing else as such. So monitoring them, assessment, these are some of the practices that ideally should take place. And each prison, each state should have its own suicide prevention training program, and both at the state headquarters and at the prison, each individual prison level. Reporting and review is very, very essential. So what can staff do? Staff and inmates you can both build up peer support and mentoring, identify even warder level staff, identify prisoners who are sensitive, who can be good communicators, to develop as listeners. So listening, looking, and feeling are all important. They'll be the first responders. Who are going to be the first responders on staff? Constructive use of time, engage and involve everybody. That's very important. A better prison environment, a green environment, an environment that is clean is something that is absolutely essential. Improved relationships between prison inmates, between prison and staff themselves. Those are very essential. And providing counseling, even online counseling, that is something that in case any of the prison officers who are participating in this want help, please get in touch with us, and we'll help you out in this. And a well-being group that could be performed. Punjab, I think, had that. I'm not sure whether they continued with this. So yes, even mental health of the staff is important. The work that is done by staff is difficult. It's a negative environment that exists, and always staff say that inmates have, the fixed period, whereas ours is a continuous period. So you are released only at the time of your retirement. So that, there is counseling that is needed for staff, good management and good working conditions, and also the possibility of advancement and promotion. That is important. So mental health of the staff is also important, and better health and well-being of all who are working in the system and even outside is important. So I'll stop this presentation of mine. And this was, a quick look at some of the mental health issues in prisons, which are very much neglected. And we need to have some kind of a concern and, some action that needs to take place to actually establish mental health care units within the prison setup. So, of course, I will look forward to the questions that will happen later on. Thank you, Dr. KP Singh.
Thank you, Upneet, for flagging the issues of mental health for the prisoners as well as for the staff. And I must say that mental health of prisoners is the area which is the most neglected area in prison administration. And we need to work very seriously and vigorously to address these issues. So thank you very much once again. May I now request Professor Vijay Raghavan. He is from Tata Institute of Social Sciences, Mumbai. And Professor Raghavan is a voice which is heard with respect in the circles of prison administrators. He will elaborate on the role of NGOs in the prison administration and will try to find out the solutions to the question mentioned by Shri Somesh Goyal ji, कि जो दिखता है वो बिकता है. So welcome, Professor Raghavan, for your expression.
Thank you so much for that very kind introduction, Dr. Singh. I will straight come into the topic for which I have been asked to speak today, which is the role of NGOs in prisons. So if one looks at the whole issue of what is it that NGOs or civil society organizations can do, and my very short answer is they have a huge role to play. And this is something that has been reiterated time and again by various committees that have been set up. Right from the time of the Gladstone Committee report in 1894, which was set up in UK to reform the prisons in England, the Gladstone Committee report spoke about the role of civil society organizations in the rehabilitation of prisoners. After that, if you look at our Indian scenario in terms of the various committees that we have had, especially the ones like the Mullah Committee and the Justice Krishna Iyer Committee, and then of course the Model Prison Manual of 2016, all of them have talked about the role that non-governmental organizations, academic institutions, and volunteers, etc., can play and should play with regard to the prison administration, as well as the issue of reformation and rehabilitation of prisoners. So actually, this topic is a no-brainer, because when we talk about a person who has been taken into custody, unless the person is going to be decapacitated, which is when we talk about capital punishment, which is again a very small and rarest of rare cases that we talk about, for the rest of the population which goes into prison, they have to come out one day or the other. And we know that the largest number of them come out on bail as under trials, and conviction rates being not very high in our country compared to many other countries of the world. So not everybody who gets arrested ends up with a conviction. And therefore, and conviction rates are somewhere in the region of 50 to 60%. Of course, it varies from crime to crime. So looking at the fact that you have a large number of people who are going in, if I were just to look at the Prison Statistics India report of 2021, there were 18,000 admissions in Indian prisons, 18 lakh admissions in Indian prisons. So the population as on 31st December 2021 was 5.54 lakhs, but the number of people who entered the prison system was 18 lakh people. Now 18 lakh is a very big number, and we don't know what is happening to them once they go out, either on bail or on acquittal or on discharge or after completion of sentence, whatever the situation may be. So if you look at the role of the prison administration is responsible for the upkeep, for the welfare, and for the overall health and mental health needs of the prisoners while they are inside prison. So including, if one talks about education of prisoners, it talks about vocational training of prisoners, etc., which is very much the mandate of the prison department, and they are organizing programs throughout the country in various prisons to fulfill these objectives. But what happens to a person when they go out? Now, in that respect, there is no department in our country which is taking responsibility for this. In fact, I would say that one of the gaps in our criminal justice system is that we do not have a post-release rehabilitation program which is monitored or administered through the government, both at the central level and at the state government level. The minimum amount of work that some of this is done is in some states. Odisha, I know they have post of aftercare officers. In West Bengal, they have a post of welfare aftercare officers. And in some states, probation officers under the Probation of Offenders Act are also given this job. For example, in Maharashtra, there is a scheme for grant in aid for released prisoners, whereby prisoners, after completing their sentence or even after completing their period on bail, etc., can get a grant of up to 25,000 rupees. And this amount is to be disbursed through the office of the probation officer. So little bit here and there, we see some skeletal programs when it comes to the role of the state when it for rehabilitation. And this is where I feel that NGOs can come in and plug that gap. And for that, there has to be an atmosphere of trust. Currently, unfortunately speaking, that atmosphere of trust is not existing. In most states, prison departments are suspicious of allowing NGOs to enter. The kind of NGOs that they allow, and I'm speaking from my own experience of the last 3.5 decades, in most states where NGOs are being allowed, they are only those type of NGOs which come either for spiritual healing or they are here for some yoga, vipassana, or maybe at the most some kind of vocational training activity. But let me tell you from my own experience that this is not enough when we are talking about rehabilitation. When we talk about rehabilitation, you have to look at the person's overall situation in terms of their physical and mental health, and you have to look at the family situation of the person, and you have to look at the situation, what happens after the person goes out. And if one has to look at all these three aspects, the only people who can do the job are NGOs and who appoint and work through trained social work intervention. So what I'm essentially trying to tell the audience today is that there is a great need to have social workers who are trained social workers to work in the system, either as part of the system or through the organizations which can be allowed to work here. My own experience of having been part of this field action project of TISS called Prayas, which has been working in Maharashtra and Gujarat prisons for the last 33 years, has shown that social workers can play a tremendous role in terms of a catalyst to link the prisoner with their family and also after release. We are regularly visiting at least 10 jails in Maharashtra and Gujarat today, and our team has been working there dedicatedly for the last so many decades, and the results are quite positive. And this can be borne out by the fact that the prison authorities have continuously supported our work. Once we started working, we have never had a single year when permission to work inside these prisons has been at stake. In fact, we are probably the only organization which is being given permission by the prison department 3 years at a stretch. Usually our permission is valid for 3 years, and then again after 3 years, it is renewed for another 3 years. This is how the work has been going on. Now, coming to what is it that social workers and NGOs can do? Firstly, the whole issue of social-legal and psychosocial counseling and guidance. A person, when he comes inside the custody, is in a state of confusion, is unsure about what is going to happen to their life, is also very worried about the family situation. And because of this, there can be a number of consequences, including violent behavior or aggression or going into depression, etc., about which Dr. Upneet Lalli has very clearly talked about what are the mental health consequences of being in prison. Now, if there is a person, to talk to that person and also to get in touch with the family. So when we work inside, what we look at is that we talk to the person and ask that person that, is there anything you want to inform about your family? And many of them come forward and say, please contact my family, please inform them that, I'm inside here. Please tell them that come to see me for my mulaqat. Or in the case of women, we find that most of them are worried about the condition of their children left outside. So they would tell us that, please go and make a home visit and see what the situation is at home. And based on these requests, then subsequently our social workers would either call up the family or make a home visit wherever required and possible. The other thing that one needs to look at when one is looking at the role of the social worker or the NGO that we are talking about is when it comes to legal aid and guidance. Now, already there is the District Legal Services Authority, the DLSA, which is supposed to provide legal aid to people who cannot afford a lawyer, and they have visiting lawyers who come inside. But there is a gap between the access, because many times the legal aid lawyer who's visiting the prison does not have access to all the barracks. They come and sit inside a cabin or a space that has been given to them. And then it is up to the prison authorities to identify those who need this kind of support. Now, prison authorities themselves are so overworked and busy in their everyday work, then sometimes this whole thing of identification of people who need legal guidance and aid can get left out. And this is again where, if there is a collaborative approach between the prison authorities and the organization which has been given permission to work inside prison, they can play a very good role of bridging that gap to identify people who need legal aid and guidance and link them up with the District Legal Services Authority so that they are getting a lawyer. The third area of legal aid and guidance would be a lot of people in prison who have private lawyers but are not in touch with their lawyers, because lawyers may have taken the fees and then they are not in touch with them. We come across many such cases. In these kind of cases, the social worker or the NGO can contact the lawyer, find out what's going on in that case, and communicate this back to the prisoner, and that will immediately create a kind of a mental peace in that person, that at least my lawyer has not absconded. And if the lawyer has absconded, then the person can be guided to say, you can file a complaint with the Bar Council that, your lawyer has taken money and has absconded. Many such cases happen from time to time. And this is especially true in the case of foreign prisoners. People who get arrested under NDPS and those kind of cases, at the time of arrest, some lawyers come forward and they take big amount of money from them, and later on they just vanish. And then this person is waiting for that lawyer to come and help that person. The third area where NGOs can play an important role is to arrange various kinds of activities inside. These could be vocational activities, this could be recreational activities, these could be educational activities, these could be activities relating to mental health, helping them promote their mental health, like through art and craft, music therapy, dance therapy, and things of that sort. Then one comes to the issue of access to schemes and information. You see, prison is a place where a person is in custody, and especially in the case of under trials, sitting and doing nothing. It's like you are sitting for months together with nothing to do. And like we all say, like what is it, that idle mind is a devil's workshop kind of a thing. You see that playing out, because the only thing they are engaged in is talking to each other, learning from each other. And this is why many of our clients with whom we work, they tell us that, sir, हमने तो crime में अभी PhD कर लिया है, because हम जब अंदर आए थे तो छोटी सी चोरी के केस में आए थे, अभी हमको और बहुत कुछ सीखने को मिल गया. So, and this is true not just in India, this is true across the world. There is a concept called prisonization, where a person gets prisonized and person gets criminalized. So this is a space which really can be productively used. I've been talking about this continuously wherever I get a chance. The Department of Skill Development under the Ministry of Skill Development can reach out to prison populations and organize certified courses, short-term courses, depending on the qualification that the person have. Some people are maybe 5th standard pass, some are 10th, most of them are, in fact, the Prison Statistics India tells us that 40% are below 10th standard pass. So keeping that in mind, if one could come up with various training programs, because the Department of Skill Development is meant to organize skill development trainings. Similarly, the Department of SC/ST Welfare, they could come inside and try and inform the prisoners about the various schemes that are available for SC/ST population. Department of Women and Child Development, they can come inside and talk about the various schemes that are available for women, especially say widow pension scheme or schemes for children of prisoners left outside. And this role of bringing these departments inside the prison to come and give lectures and awareness programs is something that the NGO can play that role. Because as I have been repeatedly saying, to expect the prison officers to be doing all this in the current situation is a little idealistic. In our current situation, there are 30% vacancies in the prison department, and they are terribly overworked, we must also keep in mind that the sanctioned staff strength of a prison is based on the official capacity. Now, if you look at a prison like Arthur Road in Mumbai, the official capacity is 900, but the actual population is 3,000. Now, the staff strength is based on the official capacity, and there also there are vacancies. So then you can well imagine what is the kind of stress that the prison staff is undergoing. So to expect the prison staff to be doing all these activities is all good on paper, but my whole experience has been that it doesn't work. So I have a simple point to make, that social workers and NGOs can play a great role in facilitating the whole process of rehabilitation, both inside and post-release. But for that, we need to develop a relationship of trust between the prison department and the NGOs. By all means, the prison department should carry out due diligence. I am not saying that they should just give permission to anybody who comes and approaches them. They can have criteria. They can look at what is, like, for example, whether the organization is a registered organization, when was it registered, what kind of activities has it done in the past, what is its track record. You can ask them for annual reports that they may have come up in the past, or whether they are attached to some recognized academic institution. In fact, I would say you can even start with allowing students of social work to start coming into prison for their training purpose, because students of social work and students of law are often, they have to go inside various institutions to do their internships and their fieldwork training. You allow social work students because they will come from a recognized academic institution. Now in Maharashtra, for example, all our students, not all, but at least 50% of our students who are from the specialization of criminology and justice, they go into our prisons in the nearby region for their fieldwork training. And through that process also, they are also learning something, and the prisoners are also getting benefited through the intervention. So lots can be done. It's only a question of making a start, and this start has to happen from the top of the department. Unless and until the DG prisons is convinced about the fact that one can involve civil society organizations in a big way, in a controlled manner, not in an uncontrolled manner, but in a controlled manner, then I think the message will go down the line, and the DIG prisons could be given the authority to vet and verify which are the organizations can be given permission. And then based on that, this process can be started. Maybe each state could start it with some 3 or 4 prisons, like a pilot, and study it for 1 or 2 years, then decide whether they want to go forward for it or not. So I'll stop here because I know time is very short, and if there are any thoughts and questions, I'm very happy to take. Unfortunately, sir, I have to go for another meeting organized by NHRC. I'm a member of the core committee on criminal justice system, and that meeting is currently going on. So I had said that I'll finish this talk and then I'll join this meeting. So at this point, if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer. Otherwise, I'll take your permission to leave.
Thank you very much, Professor Raghavan. You have broken the myth of prison officers कि जेल की हवा भी बाहर नहीं जानी चाहिए और जेल के अंदर केवल कैदी या हवालाती ही आ सकता है. You have given very useful reasons why jail should be open for NGOs. Thank you very much, and we will not hold you. You may please attend your meeting. If there will be any question, I will request Professor Lali or Dr. Lali to answer that on your behalf.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Lali, for inviting me.
Now, with the permission of the President, it is my turn, or it is my opportunity to express my views on the theme premature release of prisoners, law, policies, and practices. I'll upload my presentation. It may take 1 minute. Please bear with me. I hope the presentation is there. Are you getting it? Are you getting, Dr. Lali?
Yes, sir, we are able to see.
Yes. Recently, we might have read in the newspapers, there are discussions going on 3 issues. In Punjab, demand to release Zarjuana and Bandi Sikhs. In Gujarat, question is being raised about release of Bilkis Bano. And few months back, questions were raised about release of Rajiv Gandhi's killers in Tamil Nadu. All these issues hover around premature release of prisoners. We all know the import of section 429 of CRPC is that every part of the sentence is to be suffered by the convict, and every word of the order is to be satisfied, meaning thereby there is no scope from incarceration or from the sentence. And there are public policies, laws to ensure that the sentence is suffered in the manner it is prescribed in the policy. I would like to mention here that the role of the courts is to pronounce this sentence. How that sentence is to be executed is within the domain of the executive government. And Judge Sutherland, in the famous case United States versus Bench, has said that to render judgment is judicial function and to carry out the judgment into effect is executive function, meaning thereby executives can frame policy how that sentence will be served and in what manner. It is in this background that premature release of prisoners becomes relevant. And IPC provides for it. It is not that it is at the whims and fancies of the government. IPC provides for premature release of prisoners. Section 54 and Section 55 are the relevant section. Justice Krishna Iyer again gave the philosophy behind premature release of prisoners. And he mentioned in All India Judges Association's case that law and justice are distant neighbors, sometimes even strange hostiles. And he advocated that premature release is a means to make law and justice as good neighbors. And it is in this background we can find out the justification of premature release of prisoners. Consideration in government policies about premature release of prisoners are basically 4 or 5. That is in public interest, for human concern, for mitigating individual's misery, for rewarding his good conduct, and for ensuring his reformation, rehabilitation, and reintegration within the mainstream of the society. About the nature of premature release or clemency in Ipuru Sudhakar, the Supreme Court has very clearly stated that it is not overturning the judgment of the conviction. The conviction will remain. It is only to mitigate the punishment. To mitigate the punishment in the interest of public, to mitigate the miseries of the individual, and to ensure that he is reformed and his good conduct inside the prison is rewarded. Let me now come to the sources of premature release in Indian statutes. Basically, there are 3 different types of authorities who have the power to cut short the sentence of a prisoner. The first one is the sovereign. Sovereign means the president and the governors of the state. And the sole reason for this is that clemency is the defining attribute of sovereign, meaning thereby जो कानून देता है वो कानून से माफी भी दे सकता है. This is the philosophy. Secondly, the appropriate government, the elected government, and they exercise this power in public interest as well as to serving the cause of humanity. And thirdly, the prison authorities, under the Prison Act and rule made under the Prisons Act. And it is basically to reward the good conduct of the prisoner inside the prisons and to motivate them to behave in a disciplined manner. Now let me discuss the laws, the policies, the tools, or the instruments of premature release in Indian statutes. Firstly, in the Indian Constitution, Article 72 for the President of India and Article 161 for the governors of the state prescribe then they can award pardon, or they can commute the sentence, or they can remit the sentence, or they can suspend the sentence of any convict on his request. And no question is being asked. No question would be asked why they have released, why they have granted pardon. The court can only intervene by way of judicial review in a limited manner if the power has been exercised mala fide or some procedural aspect has been neglected. The second instrument of premature release is the powers of the state governments or the central government, elected government, under the provisions of the CRPC. And there are two types of powers of the elected government under the CRPC. One is relating to commutation of the sentence, and secondly is the remission of the sentence. Commutation of sentence means changing the nature of the sentence, meaning thereby changing the category of the sentence, that is from death to life imprisonment or from life imprisonment to fine, etc. And that power is given under provisions of section 433 CRPC, restricted by 433A and 435. The second power is given to the executive government, the power to remit a sentence or the power to suspend a sentence. And that power is given. That power is given under section 432 of the CRPC. The state government, on case-to-case basis, on the request of the prisoners, and after obtaining the views of the trial court, can suspend or can remit the sentence of a individual prisoner. The fourth type of the instrument is provided to the jail authorities. The jail authorities can shorten the sentence of a prisoner, meaning thereby can shorten the term of the sentence by way of remission. In legal parlance, in legal documents, it is called shortening of sentence, but in jail manual, they have mentioned it remission by jail authorities. And how they do it? If a prisoner is behaving well, he is of good conduct inside prison, and he is performing the duties given to him inside jail, then the jail authority, by way of reward, can shorten his sentence. And the limit prescribed is up to 1/3 of the sentence. And with the permission of the government, 1/4 of the sentence, and with the permission of the government, it can extend even up to 1/3 of the sentence. And if the state government give any extra remission on the occasions of 26th of January or 15th of August or any other special occasions, then it will be in addition. Let me tell you, in 1 year in Haryana in 2014 and again in 2018, the Haryana prisoners got remission to the tune of about 250 days in a year. So that is the power of the prison authorities to shorten the sentence of the prisoners. And the next power to release a prisoner prematurely is that with the Supreme Court under Article 21 and Article 142 of the Constitution of India. In order to do complete justice, they can exercise their extraordinary power under Article 42 and they can release a prisoner prematurely. And recently, in the case of Rajiv Gandhi's killers, the Supreme Court has exercised its extraordinary power under Article 142 and released them because they have already served 27 or 28 years of imprisonment inside the jail. there are certain issues which I will like to flag here because the time is limited. My only aim was to give you the instruments of premature release, the laws and the policies. Let me mention that for remission of sentence, no policy can be framed. Only procedural guidelines can be framed because it is on case-to-case basis. And in case-to-case basis, every case is unique. So no policy can govern it. But of course, guidelines can be issued to guide the procedures. In case of commutation of sentence, guideline can be prescribed to ensure that the exercise of power is not arbitrary. And Section 433 CRPC says that state government or the central government can exercise this power suo moto. Suo moto means without any application or request from the prisoners. And to give effect to this section of law, in the prison manual, a paragraph is added, section 516B of Punjab Jail Manual, here I am referring, just to give you an instance, where it is prescribed and it is mandatory for the jail superintendent to present the case of every prisoner for commutation who have spent 14 years in jail. So this is the legal obligations. It is not any favor, it is not any concession. It is the legal obligation of the government to consider. The government is well within their rights to reject, but they have to consider. So this is about commutation. And for that, to curtail arbitrariness, a uniform or a premature release policy is to be framed. Unfortunately, most of the states do not have a well thought out premature release policy. And it is necessary that the premature release policy should be there. And if it is uniformly discussed and provided, then it will be a very good solution. And in the premature release policy, these are the issues which are generally mentioned: classification of convicts, requirement of good conduct, remissions earned, old and infirm convicts, mentally sick prisoners, total and actual sentence served by the prisoner, frequency of PMR meeting, procedure, and constitution of premature release board. These are some of the important ingredients of those premature release policies. Time is limited, therefore I will only flag these issues which need consideration of the government, consideration of the prison officer, the correctional officers, because there are so many anomalies, so many misconceptions, so many wrongdoing so far as premature release of prisoners is concerned. And the reason is that this is the most neglected area. These sections are not taught to the law graduates. Advocates normally do not have practice on this aspect. In High Court, you will get only 1 or 2 lawyers who will be doing practice on it. And I have no hesitation in saying that even the courts, they are not having enough exposure to such type of law, and sometimes they are on wrong side. So I'll flag here only the issues and will conclude my presentation. The first issue is, should governor act as per the advice of cabinet when granting premature release? The judges are confused. In Maduram and in several other cases, they have mentioned that president has to act as per the advice of Council of Ministers, but they left the scope open for governors. President, no doubt, under Article 74 is bound by the advice of Council of Ministers, but governor do have discretion. And Madras High Court recently in Rajiv Gandhi's killer's case brought out this aspect. So some clarity is required on this issue. Second, cap on shortening of sentence under prison rules. As I told you, in Haryana, and it must be happening in other states also, in 1 year, 250 days of remissions were granted to the prisoners under prisoners' rules for shortening of sentence. Certainly there should be some cap. And in the model prison manual, we have prescribed that cap. Third, ensuring time-bound disposal of mercy petitions. President K.R. Narayanan in 5 years did not decide even a single mercy petitions. So mercy petitions kept on pending. And in Shatrughan Chauhan, the Supreme Court has held that if the execution of your death penalty is not done within a stipulated time or within a reasonable time, then you get a right to get it commuted to life imprisonment. So we have to issue some guideline at least for time-bound disposal of mercy petitions. Rationale behind consideration of 14 years to present the case for premature release. 14-year was fixed when average age in India was 39 years. And 14-year used to be almost 2/3 active life of an adult. Now, average age is 69 years. We need to revise this limit if we really want that justice is done. Today, if Razwana is released from jail, he is 56 years. He still have 15-20 years of active life. Can we have it? So a thought is required to be done on this limit of 14 years for consideration for premature release. Number of mercy petitions and number of type of reliefs. How many times a prisoner can file mercy petitions? This is to be formalized. Standardization of premature release policy. Throughout the state, throughout the country, we should have one uniform standardized premature release policy. Uniform scale of remissions by the prison authorities. The scales are again varying from state to state. Which premature release policy should be relevant? The Supreme Court in Madhuram's case and in Jagdish said that the policy prevailing at the time of conviction should be the policy under which the case of premature release of a prisoner should be considered. But I think the Supreme Court in these cases have erred, because it should not be the time of conviction, it should be the time of commission of crime. Because here Article 21 or Article 20 come into play. Then uniform formula to calculate custody period. There should be a uniform formula to decide how much custody a criminal has undergone, so that the court can take appropriate view on it. And it will be good if at all India level a uniform formula is prescribed. Important question is to be asked by the public whether the Supreme Court is justified in exercising its extraordinary jurisdiction under Article 142 in releasing a convict, prematurely releasing a convict, because the Supreme Court has already decided the appeal and have upheld the conviction, have upheld the penalty. Can they again revoke their own powers to undo that? It is an important constitutional as well as legal question which need to be deliberated upon. These were some of the issues which I wanted to flag. I'm going to finish my presentation with these conclusions that premature release is not an absolute right. It is a prerogative of the state, subject to good conduct of the convict. And it is relevant also. It is needed to ensure reintegration of the prisoners and reformation and rehabilitation of the prisoners who are serving their sentence. I conclude by saying that Abraham Lincoln, and I subscribe to this philosophy, Abraham Lincoln once said, "I have always found that mercy bears richer fruit than strict justice." This is how we need to rationalize our premature release policy. I stop here. Thank you very much. If there will be any question, I will be dealing with it at the end of my presentation during the question hour session. Now, the turn comes to Mr. or Dr. Ish Kumar. Dr. Ish Kumar is my batchmate. Is a distinguished police officer who has headed NCRB. He's also heading the IPF Center on Internal Police Reforms and is a thinking cop. He thinks and he tries to conceptualize things to ensure that the working of police as well as prison department go in positive direction. May I request Dr. Ish Kumar to share his views on policy issues affecting the performance of prison staff including reforms. Dr. Iskumar, please.
Thank you, KP. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, you are, sir.
Thank you for those nice words. Ramchandran sir, Dr. KP Singh, other distinguished panelists, and the audience, good noon to all of you. Straight coming to the topic. Now, whatever prison reforms we have been talking since morning, like sentence planning and alternative punishments, Mr. Ahmed spoke about. Mental health care of the prisoners, Dr. Upneet Lali spoke about. The role of the NGOs, Professor Vijay Raghavan spoke about. And of course, premature release, Dr. KP spoke about. And then financial independence, Sumesh Goyalji spoke about. The point I'm emphasizing is that all these reforms broadly has to be carried out by the prison staff deployed inside the prisons. And they have to be in sync with the current thinking on reforms. Secondly, they should have competence as well as attitude to carry out these reforms. Now, this is my focus of the presentation. And let me tell you, as a special rapporteur, NHRC, I visited number of prisons in Delhi, Haryana, UP, Chandigarh, and I found right from warder to the superintendent, they are only bothered and busy 99% of the time in their custodial duties. I mean, reforms, it takes totally a backseat. Vocational training, educational activities do take place, depends on the superintendent's interest and the initiative. So I'm basically like, today Mr. Somesh Goyal made a point, is post-release rehabilitation a job of the prison department? So that's another question one needs to look into. I will be referring to a study which BPRND gave it to Haryana Institute of Public Administration, which was carried out there under my guidance. It was a training needs analysis for the prison staff of all the 6 ranks across the prisons. In the phase 1, we had visited jail number 2 and 3 in Tihar, the Bhonsi jail in Gurugram, and Dasna jail in UP. Whatever I'm going to speak is going to be based on the findings of these studies. We had spoken to all these staff members. We had also spoken to the prisoners. We had spoken to the NGOs. We had spoken to the DLSA people. We even spoke to the district judge and judge who was looking after the legal aid, DG and IG prisons in the headquarters, even the family members of the inmates. And we had an expert committee of whom there were members who are today the distinguished panelists. So let me just flag the issues. There is a poor understanding of the various categories of prisoners, their issues and grievances. Like in UP, 58% of the inmates said that superintendent never held a grievance session in 1 year. The 3 psychologists and counselors in UP told us that superintendent is not bothered about the mental health of the prisoners. The DS in Delhi and UP said that they need training in management of prisoners' issues. Now, similarly, there is a complete or inadequate knowledge about the prisoners' rights and entitlements, especially the UN standards for the treatment of prisoners or the Nelson Mandela rules. Most of the, not only the warders, even the officers said they are not aware of the Supreme Court judgments or NHRC guidelines on these issues. Third, there was a persistent complaint by inmates regarding the inhumane, rude, and abusive behavior by the jail staff towards them. The district judge Gurugram, in a colloquial, said, "Bhai unko to dangar ki tarah hankte hain." So this is a problem which is across. The fourth, we felt that there was a need for sensitization regarding need for legal aid. About the legal aid is carried out in a very routine manner, So there is a need for a further sensitization. A lot of people are left out. Now, similarly, need for training in psychology and counseling skills. So there is very little training, which is a part of either a basic training for the prison staff. Either you have specialized counselors, but even if you have one counselor or one psychologist per jail, looking at the inmates population, we definitely need to identify our staff and train them in this. Similarly, there is a need for sensitization in reforms and rehabilitation of prisoners, the modalities of reforms and rehabilitation, and the roles of various agencies, especially the NGOs. Now, NGOs especially complained 100% in Delhi, 75% in UP, that the jail staff do not appreciate their role as NGOs. There was also need for training in gender sensitization, communication skills, and stress management. You see, the negativity in the work environment does affect the mental health as well as performance of the jail staff also. So they need to be trained on the stress management. Now, these were, of course, the things like competence or the attitude. There were other issues which are environmental factors which impact their performance, especially the jail staff, and they do not perform well. Now, these environment factors, they mostly belong to the policy domain or the work environment in which they work. Like, let me tell you, when we visited the Haryana jail, many warders told us, sir, our department should be merged with the police department. So they have no pride of being in a prison department. They also complain that most of the people who visit jails, they only ask about prisoners. No one is bothered about our welfare. Now, of course, there are issues like staff is overburdened. I mean, BPR&D norm of one warder for the 6 inmates in all 3 shifts, but practically it's like one warder looks after 250 to 300 inmates. Haryana, no recruitment has taken place since 2003. Some contractual people have been taken. And let me tell you that these ratios against 1:6, the actual ratio which exists is Dasna, it is 1:43. Tihar, it is 1:30. And Haryana, it is 1:16. Now, similarly, there are long working hours. There is no weekly rest. There is no shift system for AS and above. The another factor, which is a lot of discouragement because of that, it's a very poor promotional avenues. A large number of warders retire as warders or head warders only. So one needs to look at either you change the ratio of warders to head warders, or you conduct some examinations on which, based on the merit, people are promoted. Another issue bothering warders is the poor service conditions. They say, sir, they have no chair to even sit, no arrangements for it, drinking water, tea, or clean toilets, or even a shelter during the rain. साहब हम कनस्तर के ऊपर बैठते हैं उल्टा करके. There is no risk allowance. There is no cashless medical cover. So another demand which came up in UP was that sometimes there is a false court litigation, complaints against them, and they have to fend themselves. Government doesn't support them. In Haryana, because there are no ranges, so postings happen across the state and they are not limited to within the range. So they are thrown away from their home places. Similarly, in case of assistant superintendent, we found that except Tihar, both in UP as well as Haryana, there are only 4 to 5 per jail. Jail may have a strength of 1,000 to even 2,500. So, which is a very poor strength. There is no shift system, and AS is the most cutting edge level, which has all the responsibility but no powers. They cannot initiate ACRs, they cannot shift or discipline the people even within his area. I mean, Tihar has 15 to 20 AS per jail, but not in the other states. Of course, there is a huge issue of pay parity also. Mullah committee said that the police ranks and the prison ranks must have equal pays. But like AS in the older scale, it is 4,200, whereas the inspector of police is 4,600. In Haryana, sub AS and AS both have the same pay scale. Promotions again is an issue. Promotion is a huge issue in Tihar jail because out of 16 superintendent posts, 12 come from the Danix cadre. So there are very few promotional chances, and whenever the promotion chances are there, even those 4 posts are not filled up because there is a minimum requirement of service as a DS in a particular category, which hardly gets filled up. Similarly, all the financial and administrative and disciplinary powers are with the superintendent. DS has very little powers. We also feel that the maybe DS post should be increased and each jail should have a DS reforms and rehabilitation. Again, the question of pay parity at the superintendent level. In Haryana, superintendent gets 5,400 scale, whereas in police, even an additional SP has a 6,600 grade. One solution we found was in UP, where in the superintendents, there are grades 1, 2, and 3. Superintendent has no power to hire people on an outsourcing basis, even against the vacancies. Financial powers are limited. And another concerning issue is this getting superintendents in the jails who are not from the jail cadre. You see, a policeman or a paramilitary officer, he can only think from the security angle. He doesn't think it from the other angle, especially the reform and rehabilitation angle. Now, similarly, we found in case of medical officer that there is a huge coordination issues between the jail staff and the medical staff. Medical officers often feel that they don't get adequate respect from the jail staff, although they have a higher pay scale than the superintendent who is posted there. Medical officer has no purchase power. He has to throw every paper to the superintendent. And in Haryana, there is a strange concept of 14 days posting of a medical officer. Obviously, there will be no ownership. I think to attract more medical officers to the jail duty can be considered as a hard duty, which at present it is not being there. So all these issues, they are causing a lot of disenchantment, discouraging the people. People are not bothered. They are passing time. They are overworked. So we need to look into all this. And the neglect, let me also mention to you, it goes right up to the top at the center. Now, there is no separate prison directorate at the Government of India level. In Ministry of Home Affairs, it has 21 joint secretary level officers looking after the various police issues. There is not one joint secretary looking after the prison department. There is only one under secretary who is now promoted as deputy secretary who coordinates about the whole prison activities. Even BPRND, which has around 7 posts of IG and number of DIGs, there is not one officer from the prison cadre who is taken on deputation there, so who can represent the prison issues in a right perspective. The training infrastructure is dismal. I mean, I have never seen such bad training institutes as when I visited Patiala, I visited UP. I mean, Tihar has no training institute. It's sitting in the capital, but there's no training institute at all. UP has only one. There is no National Academy of Prisons as Mullah Committee had recommended. There is no national policy on prisons in India. And always, of course, the debate whether it should be brought to the concurrent list or should continue in the state list. We also felt that large number of time prisoners are not produced in the courts because police escorts don't come, even taking to the hospitals. So maybe on Tihar pattern, the police platoons should be attached to the each jail, maybe by way of extra sanctions. There should be rewards and incentives for the prison staff. Maybe states can institute the state level medals for encouraging the good workers. medical infrastructure definitely needs upgrade, and we need to sanction an intelligence setup, a law officer, team of psychologists and counselors, an R&D and TNA cell. The 2016, the BP-R&D model prison manual has not been adopted by most of the states as yet. I think some exceptions are like Delhi. So they need to do. So I would conclude by saying that our study found out that these are large number of competency gaps, attitude gaps, and policy issues, the work environment issues, which until unless we take care of, until unless the prison manual is regularly sanctioned as per overcrowding, recruited, well-trained, sensitized, is well-paid, motivated, there is a proper work environment, service conditions are improved, journey of the prison reforms will be difficult to achieve. That is what we thought. Thank you very much. With this, I'll stop. And if there are any questions later, I will welcome them. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Yesh Kumar. You have really become the voice of the prison staff and prison officers. Whatever they wanted to say, you have already said. And you have rightly mentioned that they are the most neglected group of government servants. And sometimes I pity that they are the group who suffer lifelong incarceration without committing any crime. They deserve sympathy of the government. There is a need to do something more for them, so far as their service conditions and welfare is concerned. So thank you very much once again. Now we have finished with all the 6 presentations, or all the 6 speakers have spoken. And this is the time for open house discussion, question and answer session. May I request the back end team to unmute everybody so that they can ask their questions. But the only thing is that the one who want to ask question first should raise his hand so that we identify him. And then I will ask him to ask his question in brief and indicate to whom the question is addressed, to whom they want answer. And no second answer will be permitted because time is very limited. The officer who is asked to reply that question is also requested to reply in brief so that more and more questions could be taken. So may I open the house for question and answer session and further discussion. Yes. Yes, any question from the participants? आप घबराइए नहीं, चूंकि ज्यादातर लोग जो है वो हिंदी स्पीकिंग के हैं, तो आप हिंदी में भी अपना क्वेश्चन पूछ सकते हैं. There is no issue. Yes, Ms. Sahgal.
Mr. Singh, can I add few words? Just a little bit. I'll not take much time. So,
yes, please.
Yeah. I'll just talk very precisely. All of you have said very right things, and they were practical because आपने भी सर्व किया, गोयल साहब ने भी सर्व किया, and Mr. Ahmed is a pioneer in the reformation. But still, I'll say that a conclusion was from the Dr. Yesh Kumar. But we still say that all of us are repeating same things. But that till date, government has not listened to us. So lack of staff, lack of promotion policies, disparities in the pay, lack of infrastructure, but still the prisons are existing and doing well. So my question, I think I'm audible. So
yes, you are.
I'll just request Mr. Ahmed, as for the overcrowding, he said the alternate to the prisons. So I think.
प्लीज बाकी अनम्यूट कर दीजिएगा, जब आप क्वेश्चन पूछे तभी अपने आप को म्यूट करिए, अनम्यूट करिएगा. आवाज आ रही है?
So Ahmed said, why not to come up with a concrete policy on the alternate to the prison and submit it to the government, because overcrowding सब face कर रहे हैं, and even judicial committees which are visiting the jails हर सब में ये कहते हैं ये फैसिलिटी दो, their rights are infringed. But they are the person who send them to the judicial custody. Why not? So little bit of burden should be shared by them also. So they should also work on the alternative prison.
Thanks, Rajani. We have understood. We have understood your question. May I request Dr. Ahmed to please respond?
Now the whole question is who will bell the cat?
Yes, sir. वही तो है, घंटी बजानी है ना.
Now the question is, we have been identifying and we have identified all the ills that plague the prison services in our country. Now that is where I feel that the one solution lies in setting up a prison commission, I mean National Prison Commission, headed by perhaps a retired retired Supreme Court judge. And because it is the courts which have been helping us all along. We have achieved, but all these solutions, they're not within the purview of state governments. But wherever state governments have decided, they really formed. See, for example, the kind of reforms that were brought by the southern states were not there in northern states. So there is something to learn, and there are good practices already. But I think you rightly pointed out by you, who will bell the cat?
Thank you, Dr. Ahmed. Thank you, Dr. Ahmed. Now, Dr. Anshu Garg may ask his question, please.
Sir, good afternoon, sir. My question is directed to Dr. Sir Somesh Goyal, sir, and also to Dr. Ish Kumar, sir. Sir, यही मेरा कहना था कि सर prison reforms अगर होते हैं, better conditions होती तो biggest beneficiaries शायद prisoners होंगे. Prisoners का ही फायदा होना है, society का indirect फायदा होगा. तो सर जब तक वो prisoners association नहीं होगा तो या कोई और ऐसा तरीका हो सकता है क्या कि जिससे prisoners come up as a single platform to force governments to do this?
Thank you, Anshu. Somesh Goyal ji is not present. May I request Dr. Ish Kumar to please respond to his question?
बात तो डॉक्टर अंशु बिल्कुल सही बोल रहे हैं. केपी, देयर इज लॉट ऑफ बैकग्राउंड डिस्टर्बेंस.
प्लीज बाकी अनम्यूट कर दें अपने आप को. बाकी म्यूट कर दें, सॉरी, अपने आप को. बैकग्राउंड में आवाज आ रही है. पार्टिसिपेंट से रिक्वेस्ट है कि अपने आप को म्यूट कर दें. जो क्वेश्चन पूछे सिर्फ वही अनम्यूट रहे. यस
अंशुल, तो आपने जो बात कही बिल्कुल सही कही. इसमें एक रोड मैप बनाने की जरूरत है. एंड मे बी सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट्स एंड द स्टेट गवर्नमेंट्स हैव टू कम थ्रू. पीपल हैव टू रिकॉग्नाइज द इंपॉर्टेंस ऑफ द प्रिजन डिपार्टमेंट, and the prison leadership also has to go ahead and maybe coordinate with the state governments and do better. It's a long drawn battle, but I think all of us has to fight it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ish Kumar. Yes, next question, please. Yes, next question from the participants.
I think from the head office, somebody's raised their hand, at least in the chat. I'm not sure which.
Good afternoon, sir.
Yes,
good afternoon, ma'am.
Yes, please.
Sir, my question is this, that being a deputy jailer, we do have limited power. What would be the one advice you will like to give, that with the limited power, we need to implement those policies as a new joinee as a deputy jailer, what we can do? Second thing, sir, as I am working in a very small jail, that is Mainpuri. So NGOs are not coming here, and they are also directing towards the Noida or the Ghaziabad jails. So why? What can we do in this regards to, sir? These two questions, sir, with I would like to ask, sir.
You are Mr. Pawan Kumar Trivedi.
Sir,
yes,
sir, jailer,
sir,
sir.
You are Pawan Kumar Trivedi.
Yes, sir. Sir, jailer, sir, is Pawan Kumar Trivedi, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, I'm deputy jailer Mohit Kumar.
Good. Dr. Ahmed, will you please like to respond? Yes, Dr. Ahmed, I think he is not available. Dr. Ish Kumar, you may like to respond, please.
I mean, NGOs not coming. The only thing is prison headquarters has to make a list of all the willing NGOs and then maybe distribute the areas or jails And I know it can be difficult. Most of the NGOs are capital centric, but I'm sure if you make attempt, you'll be able to find. And the second question, what you can do, let me tell you that all the great changes in the world have been brought by the individuals, be it Einstein, be it Newton. So if you really try and look at your work profile, you will definitely find ways and means. Jahan chaha, wahan raha. So you can do it, dear. You are a youngster. Go ahead.
So thank you, Dr. Ish. The next question is from Ms. Meenakshi Das, and she has put that question on the chat box. She is asking, how far release of prisoners on good behavior is for the greater good? Will it not encourage criminals that they can get away with crime if they behave in certain way after committing the crime?
So you respond to that.
Yes, I will respond to it. Ms. Meenakshi, let me tell you that release or premature release is not an absolute right. It is a right which is subject to good conduct inside prisons, good discipline inside prisons, and the prison authorities will see whether he has reformed or not. It is not an absolute right. There is a committee which consider all these aspects and then decide whether to release him or not to release him. This is one aspect. Second aspect is, what is the purpose of incarceration? In modern world, especially in the 20th century and 21st century, the correctional philosophy is that incarceration is for correction and not for punishment, because incarceration itself is punishment. So our purpose is only to help the prisoner reform, rediscover his personality. And this premature release is a process by which we help the prisoner to become a useful members of the society. And if a prisoner has not reformed, he is not behaving well, then he does not get a right, legal right. His case will be considered and rejected. So I think that your apprehension is genuine. As a public man, the question should come to your mind. But the answer is that only those prisoners or those criminals will be released who have served a long sentence and have shown or indicated that they have reformed. I hope I have answered your question.
KP, can I say something here?
Yes, please, please add, please add.
Don't you think that the provisions of the premature release are getting misused based on the political compulsions or likings?
Dr. Ish, that has always been there, but still there is judiciary to have a review of it. And the case which you have in your mind, it is already under scrutiny with the Supreme Court. Yes. Yes, Mr. Pandey, PN Pandey, please ask your question. Please unmute yourself. Unmute yourself.
Sir, am I audible now?
Yes, you are.
सर मेरी लंबी सेवा लगभग 26 साल की है और अल्टरनेटिव डिटेंशन और सीआरपीसी में अमेंडमेंट आईपीसी में अकॉर्डिंगली इसके करने के लिए कई बार ऑनरेबल मिनिस्टर लोगों की तरफ से भी आया कि हम अमेंड कर रहे हैं, लेकिन ये अल्टरनेटिव पनिशमेंट की बात जो हो रही है वो कभी सर इसको प्रपोज नहीं किया गया। और आंध्रा का जैसे केस हम लोग देख रहे हैं, वो भी 20 साल से प्रोबेशन वो कस्टोडियल सर्विस कम्युनिटी सर्विस के लिए वो इस पे पेंडिंग है। तो ये जो अपैथी है सर जेल डिपार्टमेंट के लिए या रिफॉर्मेशन के लिए, ये बहुत चिंताजनक है और इस पे आप जैसे लोग जो फोरम पे इतने बड़े उस पे है, इसको सर रेज करने की आवश्यकता है। मेरा ये सजेशन है सर कि इसको इस अपैथी को दूर किया जाए सर।
Your suggestion is very good, and let me inform you, the committee which was formed by MHA to suggest reform in IPC, CRPC and Indian Evidence Act. I was a consultant with that committee, and your concern has been addressed in the recommendations of that committee.
Okay, thanks.
Those recommendations are under consideration with the Ministry of Home Affairs, and they have constituted another committee to have discussions over those suggestions. And alternative to imprisonment, let me tell Professor Ahmad and Dr. Ahmed and you, as well as the other participant, a full chapter on community service has been proposed, as well as the requirement of release of criminals on probation has also been engraved in that in those recommendations.
That's quite heartening, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, I cannot reveal all those things because it is not public yet, but I can only say that those issues or those concerns have been addressed in the recommendations of that committee.
Thanks, sir.
Yes.
KP, again, one thing I would like to say,
sir.
These recommendations on alternative punishments, including community services, are fine. But as Somesh ji was saying, you need to build in SOPs and infrastructure as well as monitoring mechanisms for those alternative punishments.
I totally agree. Yes, Dr. Ahmed, please, will you like to respond?
I too have some questions.
Please.
Now, not all issues relate to central government. We have a tendency to throw these issues to the central government. But what prevents state governments to attend to certain important issues like staff welfare, staff promotions, and then their exposure and training programs? What prevents state governments in not bringing certain reforms within their own jurisdiction, within their own domain? And we have excellent, brilliant DGs who have held the department and who have helped the present department to achieve so many things. But there are so many issues within the domain of state governments. Why are they not taking up? And how do we make them take up those issues?
Your question is directed to?
Directed to all the panel members.
May I request Dr. Yash Kumar to please respond?
Yeah.
Dr. Ahmed, there are no easy answers to this. The only thing which I can say is maybe the retired prison officers who retired at the various levels, including like you or the people who have retired at DIG, IG, they should create forums like IPF or with the separate forms, do a policy advocacy with the government. Maybe they can even go and file PIL with the Supreme Court, as Mr. Prakash Singh did for bringing in the police reforms. This could be one way of doing it. Secondly, I do not know whether there are some associations within the prison department and whether the rules permit that, but at least positively and constructively, if the associations can work for the welfare of the prison staff, that can be another good idea.
I think, you have rightly suggested, and let's hope something can come out of it.
Yes. Any other question from the participant? Until
Sir,
you have
just one thing.
No, you have asked your question. Any other participant?
Not my
सर एक
question, sir.
चीज ऐड करूंगी, हम सब शेर मिलके बिल्ली को जगा ही लेंगे सर, लगता वही है।
No, Anshul, discipline. You have asked your question. You will not take second question from anybody.
I'm not asking answers on a lighter note. I'm adding it.
If there is no further question, one question is there on the chat box. I'm reading it, and it is Jail Inspectorate. I do not know, from Jharkhand headquarters. They were trying to enter into the discussions also at one point of time. So the question is, work related with premature release should not be duty of prison department. It should be recommended by the sentencing of successor court. Successor court. Because in case of release or not release, jail officials are held guilty in many cases, but it is released by State Sentence Review Board. Is Mr. Kamaljeet Singh, Jharkhand headquarter. Let me answer in Hindi. He may understand Hindi better. Kamaljeet Singh ji, prison officers को कोई responsible नहीं ठहराएगा. उनकी ड्यूटी यही है जेल मैनुअल के मुताबिक कि जैसे ही 14 साल पूरे होते हैं, केस गवर्नमेंट के पास भेजे, सेंटेंस रिव्यू बोर्ड के पास. उसके बाद जेल अधिकारियों की रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी नहीं होती है. अधिकारी उसके लिए जिम्मेदार नहीं है कि किसी को छोड़ा गया या नहीं छोड़ा गया. अधिकारी तभी जिम्मेदार माने जाते हैं जब आप किसी का केस 14 साल पूरा होने के बाद अपने पास पेंडिंग रखते हैं और नहीं भेजते।
KP, I think what he's saying is कि ये रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी जो है जेल स्टाफ की जगह कोर्ट को दे दी जाए।
नहीं, कोर्ट
That
को
is what he
इसलिए
suggested.
नहीं, कोर्ट को इसलिए नहीं दी जा सकती। मैंने शुरू में ही आपको अपने प्रेजेंटेशन में भी बताया था कि जैसे ही कोर्ट ने सेंटेंस दे दिया, कोर्ट की ड्यूटी खत्म है। वो सेंटेंस कैसे पास किया जाएगा, कैसे सर्व किया जाएगा, वो रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी स्टेट गवर्नमेंट की है और प्रिजन डिपार्टमेंट स्टेट गवर्नमेंट को रिप्रेजेंट करता है। वो हर एक चीज हम कोर्ट के हवाले नहीं कर सकते। अगर कोर्ट के हवाले वो कर दिया तो उसकी जुडिशियल स्क्रूटनी कौन करेगा फिर? तो कोर्ट को तो सिर्फ जुडिशियल स्क्रूटनी के लिए ही रखा जाना चाहिए। यस,
No, but the sentence review board can have a judicial member as one of the members, like what we have in southern
वो
states.
ऑलरेडी हैं वो ऑलरेडी हैं डॉक्टर अहमद। लीगल रिमेम्बरेंस या लॉ सेक्रेटरी ऑफ द गवर्नमेंट जो है वो उसका परमानेंट मेंबर है सेंटेंस रिव्यू बोर्ड का। Another question which I am seeing, and that will be the last question I am seeing on the screen is, sorry sir, it happened here with jail superintendent Mr. Praveen Kumar, who is retired now. No.
Want to ask a question?
नरसिंहपुर, हाँ जी, यहाँ से
One by one please.
जय हिंद। हाँ, हमेशा आप लोगों को सुनना बहुत अच्छा रहता है। डॉक्टर अहमद सर, उपनीत मैडम, विजय राघवन सर, ईश कुमार सर, सभी आप लोगों ने बहुत ही अच्छा बोला। निश्चित रूप से जेल के विभिन्न विषयों पर आपने छुआ। मेरा सर एक क्वेश्चन है, यद्यपि वो विषय से थोड़ा भिन्न है, लेकिन हम सभी जानते हैं कि जेल को कभी भी प्रायोरिटी नहीं मिलती। उसका कारण है कि वोटिंग राइट्स नहीं है। मैं ये जानना चाहती हूँ कि क्या हिंदुस्तान के किसी भी स्टेट में अंडर ट्रायल प्रिजनर्स को कभी वोटिंग राइट एक्सरसाइज करने का अवसर मिला है? जब वो चुनाव लड़ सकते हैं तो वोट क्यों नहीं डाल सकते? और क्या इसके लिए कभी किसी स्टेट ने PIL फाइल किया है या कभी किसी स्टेट ने इनिशिएट किया है? क्योंकि तभी हम पॉलिटिशियंस और स्टेट गवर्नमेंट को आकर्षित कर सकते हैं कि वो हमारे लिए कुछ करें। पुलिस डिपार्टमेंट के लिए तो बहुत वेलफेयर है, लेकिन प्रिजन के लिए कुछ भी नहीं है। दैट इज ट्रू। और ये हम सब लोग पीड़ितों में शामिल है कि जिनके लिए कुछ भी बहुत अच्छा नहीं किया गया है। तो ये मेरा
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Please identify yourself. आपने अपना नाम और अपनी place of posting नहीं बताया।
Sir, I am शेफाली तिवारी, Superintendent Central Prison, नरसिंहपुर, मध्य प्रदेश।
Good. Dr. Lali has done a lot of work on voting right of prisoners. Will you please like to respond?
शेफाली, ये मुद्दा काफी बारी उठा है और इसमें अमेंडमेंट भी चाहिए, आपके जो लॉ की है उसकी चाहिए। और आप बिल्कुल सही बोला। तो ये वेस्ट बंगाल ने भी मेरे ख्याल ये मुद्दा उठाया था कि they wanted to have voting rights, but it wasn't allowed because you have the under the act, तो जो prisoners हैं, जो unconvicted हैं, they can contest elections, but there is no right to vote as such. Pressure group बन सकता है कि yes, you can file for a review and you can ask for an amendment in the law that under trials should also be given the right to vote. कई countries में है ये right to vote, यहाँ पर हमारे नहीं है this right to vote.
So thank you, Dr. Lali. Here comes the end of the open house session. May I now request Dr. Upneet Lali to present a summary of the discussions and propose vote of thanks.
Thank you, Dr. KP Singh. It's been a very, very engaging online session. Normally इतना engaging नहीं होता online forums पर यही interest है आपका। ये prison officers के लिए मेरा ख्याल से ये एक जो है ना pulse catch कर लेते हैं कि prison reforms की बात होती रहती है. So we've had 6 speakers speak on various themes. I'll first summarize and then give my vote of thanks. We started off with Shri Ramachandran from the Indian Police Foundation talking about the continued consultation and communication. So I think यहाँ पर नहीं खत्म होना चाहिए. This should continue, whatever recommendations that have emerged from this, and with a message from Shri Gurbachan Jagat about incorporating the victimology and social reintegration issues. And I think that's where when we're talking about alternatives, we can talk about restorative justice also. We had Dr. Ahmed point out to sentence planning, risk need assessment, and proper classification of prisoners. Spoke about no uniformity that exists in practices and in all India prison service, and also alternatives at the 3 stages: pre-trial, at the sentence stage, and at the post-sentence stage. We had Shri Somesh Goel who spoke about infrastructure being very important, and also how to convert, prisons into places where you engage and work with prison inmates, and the importance of financial independence and work programs, and opening up the prisons and bringing society inside the prisons, and the importance of open prisons and a multidisciplinary and multi-team work, which is departmental work, which is essential. And he also raised an important question in terms of whose responsibility is prisoner reintegration? Is it only the prison department or the other departments? And I wish we had someone from the social welfare department also being a part of this colloquium. Of course, I spoke on mental health issues and the importance of mental health, both for inmates as well as staff, and both training and improved prison environment. We had Professor Vijay Raghavan speak about role of NGOs and trained social workers and the different areas, in terms of identification for legal aid issues, and also in terms of access to services, the different schemes of the government that exist. And he also suggested a few, measures in which how prison departments can have mechanisms for association of NGOs with due diligence being made. Dr. KP Singh spoke about the uniformity in the premature release schemes and policies, and a time-bound way in which the cases mercy petitions particularly are dealt with, and a uniform premature release formula, and the scale of remission. And of course, a lot of these are under the review of the Supreme Court, but yes, we do need to have certain uniformity. Otherwise, it leads to that different persons sentenced under IPC, but different states, different rules as such. And of course, we have Dr. Ishkumar towards the end, who spoke about for the prison staff in terms of what his study on the training needs analysis has found out a gap between that exists in the training needs in terms of knowledge, attitude, and skills, the competency that needs to be built up, not just in terms of measures related to assessments, but also human rights issues that prison staff and various areas where they've pointed out that they need training on, and also policy related issues related to particularly the pay parity that should be there. And also significantly that when we talk about staff inadequacy, we also need to consider the prison staff, the prison strength, not just in terms of what is the authorized capacity, but in terms of the actuals also, and the gaps that exist. Currently, most states have a dearth of prison staff. And also in terms of building up this journey of prison reforms, which is a challenging task as such. And one way out that he suggested is, of course, an association that can work in this regard. And significantly, of course, advocacy of prison reforms on various forums, that's going to be essential so that these voices are not just discussed within the limited confines of prison, just the prison department and prison officers, but outside and beyond. And of course, a lot of staff have raised issues, and I think they all look towards hope in terms of a better system. And yes, because we keep repeating the same things again and again, and ever since Mullah Committee, the same recommendations, and we've been talking about overcrowding and prison reforms, etc. But nothing seems to change. But a lot has changed also. So I guess we should end with hope that yes, we can all be part. Of course, like one of the deputy jailers asked about what we can do. So maybe in our own ways, we can work to improve and also look at creative solutions. If we're talking about alternatives, yes, there has to be a pressure group in terms, and of course, hopefully there will be something that emerges out. But a proper roadmap is going to be essential to build up these prison reforms. And of course, there are structural issues. There are issues which do not involve much of finances. There are issues which involve finance. So there are various aspects of prison reforms, and this online colloquium did provide a platform to enable some of those voices to be heard and some different perspectives to be known. And on behalf of the Institute of Correctional Administration and the Indian Police Foundation, I thank all the speakers who shared their knowledge and wisdom, and I thank all the officers who have participated in this colloquium, officers from different states and both serving and retired, and different persons who have been here out, participating and listening intently and engaging very constructively in this dialogue, I would say. And I hope that we continue with this dialogue and this onward journey of prison reforms. We have certain torchbearers out here. We have both, and I'm sure like people would be definitely noted. Shefali is one lady who is definitely bringing about changes in her own system in a own small way. So we need to keep encouraging the good practices also. And we need to also engage with the persons of experience like Dr. Ahmed and Dr. KP Singh, Rajni, all of you, because this is not going to be a one person's journey. It's going to be a collective wisdom and I guess a collective force. Nothing can stop a collective force from working. So thank you so much, all of you, for being a part of this colloquium. It's been wonderful to see the enthusiasm and to see all of you so very actively participating in this colloquium. And I thank once again Shri Ramakrishna Chandranji for visualizing this and bringing this together. Thank you so much. And I hope that the Indian Police Foundation also continues, and the Institute also will continue with this engaging in this process of prison reforms, on which we've spoken a lot has been said, a lot needs to be done, and a lot more needs to be also debated about in the public domain as well. And this, I'm sure, it's going to be on the YouTube or other social forums, so I'm sure it's going to be picked up by the others. And definitely we need to engage with the media on this, I would say. Thank you so much. Thank you to everyone.
Thank you, Upneet. There can be no better words and note to conclude this colloquium. With the permission of the President, Indian Police Foundation, Sri N. Ramachandran, may I now request all the participants to say goodbye to this colloquium and goodbye to each other. Thank you very much.